I stood alone at the international terminal on the day I turned 18, holding a worthless ticket while my family vanished. They did not get lost. They abandoned me. The architect of this cruelty was the very person I had protected my entire childhood. But they made a fatal mistake. They did not know that within 24 hours, security footage and a forgotten phone would expose their brutal lie and destroy everything they plotted. My name is Melody Sanders, and for 18 years, I have existed as a footnote in my own family's history. I live in a sprawling, white-columned house in a coastal city in the South, where the humidity clings to your skin like a second layer of clothing, and the Spanish moss drapes over the oaks like gray, ragged curtains. To the neighbors, the Sanders family is a portrait of American stability. We have the manicured lawn that gets cut every Tuesday, the luxury SUV parked in the driveway, and the annual Christmas card photo, where everyone wears matching sweaters and smiles until their jaws ache. But the truth of a house is never found in the front yard. It is found in the silence of the hallways and the things that are left unsaid at the dinner table. My mother, Donna Sanders, is a woman who has perfected the art of performative sacrifice. She moves through life with a heavy, dramatic sigh, the kind that announces to the world that she is carrying a burden no one else could possibly understand. She loves to tell her friends at the country club how much she does for her children, how she has given up her youth and her figure and her dreams for us. But in the Sanders household, the word children is usually a plural that only truly applies to one person. Ryan. My brother is 4 years older than me. He is 22, handsome in a sharp, predatory way, and he is the golden sun around which my mother orbits. From the time we were small, Ryan was the protagonist of our lives. If Ryan scraped his knee, it was a medical emergency. If Ryan scored a goal in soccer, we went out for a celebratory dinner at the most expensive steakhouse in town. Ryan was the pride of the family, a title he wore with an arrogant ease, like a jacket that had been tailored specifically for his shoulders. Then there was me. I was the plan B. I was the extra variable in the equation, the one who was expected to be quiet, grateful, and invisible. I learned very early on that my role was to be the audience for Ryan's performance. I did well in school, not because I wanted praise, but because I realized that good grades meant I caused no trouble. I kept my room spotless, so my mother would have no reason to enter it. I became an expert at shrinking myself, at occupying the least amount of space possible in a room so that the air would remain clear for Ryan and my mother to breathe. It was a lonely way to grow up, but it was peaceful in its own way. I thought I understood the rules. I thought that if I stayed out of the way, I would be safe. I was wrong. The shift began 3 months before my 18th birthday. I had applied for a prestigious summer internship at a marine biology institute in California, a program that came with a full scholarship for the upcoming fall semester. It was the kind of opportunity that could change a life, the kind of ticket out of this suffocating town that I had been praying for since I was 12. When the acceptance letter arrived in the mail, I felt a spark of pure, unadulterated joy. For the first time, I saw a future that belonged entirely to me. I made the mistake of bringing the letter to the dinner table. I placed it next to the roast chicken, my hands trembling slightly. "I got in," I said, my voice small but steady. "The institute in California. They are covering tuition." My mother looked up from her plate, her eyes glazing over the letter as if it were a utility bill. "California?" she asked, her tone flat. "That is very far away. Melody, who is going to help me with the house if you run off to the other side of the country?" She did not say congratulations. She did not smile. She immediately calculated how my success would inconvenience her. Ryan, however, had a different reaction. He was cutting his meat, the knife scraping screechingly against the porcelain. He stopped and looked at me, and I saw a flash of something dark in his eyes. It was not just annoyance. It was genuine, cold hostility. "You are leaving in August?" Ryan asked. "September," I corrected, "but the orientation is late August." Ryan put his fork down. That complicates things." He did not explain what things were complicated. He just stared at me, his jaw tight, as if I had personally insulted him by achieving something he had not handed to me. That night, the atmosphere in the house shifted from indifferent to oppressive. It felt as though the walls were closing in. Ryan started watching me. I would look up from my book in the living room and find him standing in the doorway, just observing me with a calculating expression, like a butcher assessing the weight of a cut of meat. 2 weeks later, the feeling that something was wrong solidified into a hard knot in my stomach. It was 2 a.m. The humidity had broken slightly, leaving the air heavy and still. I had gone down to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The house was dark, but a sliver of light bled out from under the door of the study. My father had died 10 years ago, and since then, the study had become Ryan's territory. He managed the family investments, a vague term that my mother used with reverence but never actually explained. I was about to walk back upstairs when I heard Ryan's voice. He was not whispering, but he was speaking in that low, intense tone men use when they think they are in control of a situation. "No, look, the timing is tight," Ryan said. "I know the stipulations. I have read the trust documents 1,000 times." I froze. My bare feet seemed glued to the hardwood floor. Trust documents? We had never discussed trusts. My mother always complained that money was tight, that we had to be careful, that maintaining our lifestyle required immense sacrifice. "She turns 18 on the 14th, Ryan continued. There was a pause, presumably as the person on the other end of the line spoke. Then Ryan laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Exactly. That is the trigger date. I need the papers ready to go the second we are clear. If she is not here to contest it, the default clause kicks in, right?" My heart hammered against my ribs so hard, I was terrified he would hear it through the oak door. "If she is not here." "Do not worry about that," Ryan said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming smoother, more confident. "She will be handled. Mother is on board. We just need the location to be remote enough that she cannot get back in time to file anything. 24 hours is all I need to authorize the transfer." I backed away slowly, step by silent step, until I reached the stairs. Then I ran. I ran to my room and locked the door, sliding down against the wood, gasping for air. If she is not here, the trigger date, the transfer. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. I knew my father had been a successful man before his accident, but I had always been told that medical bills and bad markets had eaten away most of the fortune. Was that a lie? And what was supposed to happen when I turned 18? The way Ryan spoke about me, "She will be handled," made me feel like an object, a problem to be disposed of, not a sister. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself I had misunderstood. Maybe he was talking about a business deal. Maybe she was a client. I was 18 years old, powerless, and dependent. Denial was a warm blanket, and I pulled it tight around my shoulders. I wanted to believe that my family, flawed as they were, would not actively harm me. Then came the announcement. It was a Tuesday evening, 3 days before my birthday. My mother had cooked a pot roast, a dish she usually reserved for when Ryan brought a date home. She was smiling, a rare, tight expression that didn't reach her eyes. Ryan was pouring wine, whistling a tune I didn't recognize. "Melody, darling," my mother said, placing a serving spoon on the table. "Ryan and I have been talking. We realize that we have not been fair to you lately, with you leaving for college soon. We realized this is our last chance to have a real family memory." I gripped my fork. "What do you mean?" Ryan slid an envelope across the table. It was thick and creamy, the kind used for wedding invitations or legal summons. "Happy early birthday, sis," Ryan said. The malice was gone from his voice, replaced by a smooth, veneer-like charm that terrified me more than his anger. I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 plane tickets, first class. "We are going to Paris," my mother beamed, clasping her hands together. "We leave tomorrow night. We will celebrate your 18th birthday watching the sunset from the Eiffel Tower. Just the 3 of us. A fresh start." I looked at the tickets. The departure date was tomorrow. The return was in 2 weeks. It was a grand gesture, expensive and thoughtful. Everything my family had never been toward me. Paris? I asked, my voice trembling. But that is thousands of dollars. Mom, you always said we didn't have the liquidity for— Oh, hush, she waved her hand dismissively. Ryan made some very smart moves in the market recently. We can afford it. You deserve this, Melody. You have been such a good girl. Consider this your reward. Ryan raised his glass. To Melody, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. To growing up and facing the real world. I looked at him, searching for the monster I had heard on the phone, but he was hidden behind the mask of the doting big brother. Part of me, the small, desperate part that still craved love, wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that they finally saw me. I wanted to believe that the papers and trigger date were just a misunderstanding. But as I looked at the flight itinerary, I felt a cold chill settle in my bones. The flight was not direct. It had a 12-hour layover in a massive international hub halfway across the world before connecting to Paris. It is a long trip, I said softly. It is an adventure, Ryan corrected. Trust me, Mel, it is going to be a trip you will never forget. I forced a smile, but my hands were ice cold. I did not know it then, but I was looking at the mechanism of my own disposal. They were not taking me to Paris to celebrate me. They were moving me like a chess piece across a board, positioning me exactly where they needed me to be for the clock to run out. I went to bed that night with the ticket on my nightstand, staring at the ceiling. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself that families don't do this to each other. I told myself that my mother loved me, in her own broken way. I was naive. I was 18, and I was about to learn that blood is not thicker than water. It is just harder to clean up when it spills. The trap was set. The bait was laid, and I, the obedient, quiet daughter, had walked right into it. The flight across the Atlantic felt like a dream suspended in high altitude. For the first time in my life, I was sitting in a lie-flat seat, sipping sparkling apple juice from a crystal flute, with my mother seated across the aisle and Ryan directly behind me. The tension that had suffocated our home for the last few weeks seemed to have evaporated the moment the wheels left the tarmac. My mother was laughing at a movie on her screen, her face relaxed and younger looking than I had seen it in years. Ryan was attentive, asking if I was comfortable, if I wanted another pillow, or if the cabin temperature was too cold. It was seductive. That is the only word for it. It was seductive to believe that the nightmare was over, that the hushed phone calls and the cold stares were just products of my overactive imagination. I wanted to believe that this trip was an apology, a bridge being built over the chasm that had separated us for so long. I let my guard down. I let the luxury and the sudden warmth lull me into a state of pliability. We landed at a massive international hub for our layover. It was one of those glass and steel monstrosities that felt more like a shopping mall than a transportation center. The ceiling soared 50 feet above us, and the air smelled of expensive cologne, roasted coffee, and jet fuel. We had a 3-hour wait before our connecting flight to Paris, and the atmosphere was electric with the movement of thousands of travelers. Gate 42, Ryan said, checking the boarding pass on his phone. We have plenty of time. Who wants to hit the duty-free shops? I need to stretch my legs, my mother said, adjusting her designer sunglasses even though we were indoors. And I want to look at those silk scarves we passed near security. Melody? Ryan turned to me. You want to come? Or do you want to find a bookstore? He knew me so well. Or rather, he knew exactly which buttons to press to make me feel seen. He knew I hated wandering aimlessly through luxury fashion boutiques where the sales assistants looked down their noses at teenagers. I think I saw a tech store and a bookstore back near the food court, I said. I might go check those out. Sounds like a plan, Ryan said easily. He looked down at the oversized leather tote bag slung over my shoulder. It was heavy, packed with my laptop, my chargers, a change of clothes, and, crucially, the travel wallet containing my passport, my return ticket, and my ID. Hey, Why don't you let me hold that for you? No point dragging 20 pounds of gear around if you're just going to browse. Mom and I are just going to be sitting at the cafe near the gate after she shops. It was a casual offer. It was the kind of thing a considerate brother would say. In any other universe, it would have been a mundane interaction. But looking back, I realize it was the moment the trap snapped shut. I hesitated for a fraction of a second. The old instinct, the one that told me to keep my possessions close, flared up. But then I looked at his face. He was smiling. Not with the predatory smirk I had seen at dinner, but with an open, brotherly expression. If I refused, I would be the difficult one. I would be the paranoid sister ruining the family vibe. I would be proving him right about me being unstable. "Sure," I said, sliding the heavy strap off my shoulder. "Thanks, Ryan. That is really helpful." I handed him my life. I handed him my identity, my citizenship, and my freedom. He took the bag, and for a brief second, our eyes met. I thought I saw a flicker of something. Relief? Triumph? But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He slung my bag over his own carry-on effortlessly. "Meet us at the gate in 45 minutes, he said. "Do not be late, or Mom will have a panic attack." "I won't," I promised. I watched them walk away, my mother linking her arm through his. They looked like the perfect pair, the Queen and the Crown Prince, marching toward their destination. I turned and walked in the opposite direction, feeling lighter physically, but with a strange, gnawing heaviness in my gut that I could not explain. I spent the next half hour wandering through the aisles of a bookstore, running my fingers over the spines of novels I couldn't afford to buy at airport prices. I checked my phone constantly. 30 minutes left, 20 minutes left. I decided to head back early. I didn't want to give them any reason to be annoyed. The walk back to the gate took longer than I expected. The terminal was crowded, a river of humanity flowing in every direction. I dodged families with strollers and businessmen shouting into headsets. When I finally saw the signage for Gate 42, I checked the time. I was 10 minutes early. I scanned the seating area. It was packed with passengers waiting for the flight to Paris. I looked for the familiar beige of my mother's coat or the sharp navy of Ryan's blazer. I did not see them. I walked a circuit around the waiting area. Maybe they were in the line for the bathroom. Maybe they were grabbing a coffee at the kiosk next to the jet bridge. I stood near the podium, rising on my toes to see over the crowd. Nothing. 5 minutes passed. The gate agents began making announcements. Priority boarding for Flight 780 to Paris is now beginning. I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed Ryan. Straight to voicemail. A cold prickle of sweat broke out on the back of my neck. They are probably just boarding already. I told myself, Ryan has priority status. They probably got on first to stow the bags. But my bag was with him. My passport was with him. He couldn't board without me. He would have to wait for me to give me my documents. "General boarding has commenced," the voice on the speaker announced. The crowd began to shuffle forward. I stood near the entrance of the lane, searching every face. Surely, Ryan would come jogging out any second, looking annoyed, holding my bag, asking where I had been. Surely, my mother would be waving frantically from the front of the line. The line dwindled. The stream of passengers turned into a trickle. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I walked up to the gate agent, a woman with tired eyes and a perfectly tied scarf. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sounding thin and high in my own ears. "I am looking for my family, the Sanders family, Ryan and Donna Sanders." The woman typed on her keyboard without looking up. "Sanders," she muttered. "Yes, 2 passengers, seat 1A and 1B. They have already boarded." The ground seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "2?" I asked. "But there are 3 of us. I am Melody Sanders. I am supposed to be with them." She frowned and typed again. "I show a Melody Sanders on the manifest, but—" She paused, squinting at the screen. "Status is unchecked. You have not scanned in." "I know," I said, panic rising in my throat, choking me. My brother has my boarding pass and my passport. He is on the plane. Can you call him? Can you tell him to bring my pass out?" The agent looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Miss, I cannot board you without a boarding pass and a passport, and I certainly cannot send someone onto the aircraft to retrieve items. The doors are preparing to close." "You don't understand," I pleaded, gripping the edge of the counter. "He has my ID. He has everything. He told me to meet him here. He must be waiting for me inside the tunnel." "The jet bridge is clear," she said firmly. "If your party has boarded, they have boarded. If you do not have your documents, you cannot fly." "But they are my family," I shouted, the veneer of politeness shattering. "They wouldn't just leave me." The agent picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it. Then she looked at me. "Miss, if they have your documents, they clearly made a mistake, but we are closing the flight. You need to step aside." "No!" I lunged toward the glass doors that led to the jet bridge. "Ryan! Mom!" Two security officers who had been standing nearby stepped in front of me, blocking my path. They were large, solid walls of uniform blue. "Step back, miss," one of them said. "They are on that plane." I was crying now, hot, angry tears that blurred my vision. "They have my bag. Please, just stop the plane." Through the glass, I saw the heavy metal door of the jet bridge swing shut. I heard the mechanical locking mechanism engage with a final, dull thud. It was the sound of a prison cell closing, but I was the one left on the outside. I watched through the window as the jet bridge retracted. The massive aircraft pushed back from the gate, a behemoth of metal and indifference. I stood there, shivering in the air-conditioned chill, wearing nothing but my light cardigan and jeans. I had no phone charger. I had no money. My wallet was in the tote. I had no ID. And then, the realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They hadn't forgotten me. Ryan hadn't accidentally carried my bag onto the plane. He had asked for it. He had engineered the moment of handover. He had checked the time. He had sent me away. I remembered the phone call in the study. If she is not here to contest it. They needed me gone. They needed me to miss this flight. They needed me stranded in a foreign country, a ghost in the system, unable to return to American soil before the clock struck midnight on my birthday. I looked at the departure screen. The flight status changed from boarding to departed. I was 18 years old. I was thousands of miles from home. And as I stood there, surrounded by strangers speaking a dozen different languages, I realized the most terrifying truth of all. I was not lost. I was discarded. The vibration of the phone in my pocket, the only thing I had left, startled me. I pulled it out with trembling hands. I expected a text from Ryan, maybe a feigned apology, a lie about how they got separated and they would book me the next flight. There were no messages, no missed calls. The silence from my phone was louder than the roar of the jet engines outside. It was a silence that confirmed everything. They weren't panicking. They weren't looking for me. They were sipping champagne in first class, clinking their glasses to a problem solved, to a sister erased, to an inheritance secured. I sank to the floor of the terminal, ignoring the stares of the people around me. I pulled my knees to my chest, trying to hold myself together as the world I thought I knew crumbled into dust. I was alone. But as the shock began to fade, a new feeling started to take root in the hollow space where my heart used to be. It was cold. It was sharp, and it was dangerous. They thought they had left a helpless girl at the gate. They were about to find out they had left a witness. The room they escorted me to was not a jail cell, but it certainly felt like one. It was a small, windowless box with gray walls, fluorescent lights that buzzed with a headache-inducing frequency, and 3 rows of hard plastic chairs bolted to the floor. They called it the Passenger Assistance Center, a euphemism for a holding pen where the airport stored its problems, the people with invalid visas, the people who lost their wallets, and the people, like me, who had been erased from the manifest. For the first hour, I was in a state of frantic, vibrating denial. I paced the length of the room, 4 steps forward, 4 steps back. I demanded to see a supervisor. I demanded to use a phone to call the U.S. Embassy. I tried to explain to the woman at the front desk, a stern-faced matron named Mrs. Gable, that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. My brother has my passport, I told her for the 10th time, my voice cracking. He has my return ticket. He has my money. They probably realized it the second the plane took off. They are probably trying to call you right now. Please, just check the messages. Mrs. Gable did not look up from her computer. We have received no communications from Flight 780. Miss Sanders, please take a seat. But you don't understand. I slammed my hand on the counter, the sound sharp and desperate. I am 18 years old. I have nothing. You cannot just keep me here. Sit down, she said, her voice dropping to a warning tone, or I will have security restrain you. You have no identification, as far as we are concerned. We do not even know if you are Melody Sanders. You are currently an undocumented individual in a transit zone. Undocumented. The word hit me like a physical slap. 2 hours ago, I was a first-class passenger. Now, I was a nameless body, a bureaucratic anomaly. I sat down. The adrenaline began to drain away, leaving behind a cold, shivering exhaustion. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stop the trembling. It was then that the door opened, and a man in a dark blue uniform walked in. He wasn't a police officer, but he carried the heavy, authoritative air of private security. His badge read, Shift Supervisor Miller. He held a tablet in his hand. He looked at me, not with sympathy, but with a detached curiosity, like a biologist examining a specimen that was behaving oddly. Miss Sanders? He asked. Yes, I stood up quickly. Did you hear from them? Are they turning the plane around? Miller sighed and tapped the screen of his tablet. No, the flight is continuing to Paris. However, I pulled the gate agent's report regarding the boarding of your party. I wanted to clarify the circumstances of your separation. There were no circumstances, I insisted. He took my bag. He told me to meet him. When I came back, they were gone. Miller looked at the tablet, then back at me. His expression hardened. That is not what the report says. The gate agent noted that your brother, Ryan Sanders, approached the podium 10 minutes before the doors closed. He informed the staff that the third member of their party, you, would not be joining the flight. I froze. The air left my lungs. What? He stated that you had decided to terminate your travel. Miller read from the screen, his voice monotone. He claimed that you were experiencing an emotional episode and had voluntarily chosen to separate from the family to, and I quote, cool off in the terminal. The room seemed to spin. An emotional episode. That is a lie, I whispered. I went to a bookstore. Miller continued, ignoring my interruption. He told the staff that you have a history of instability and that it is best not to pursue you, as it would only aggravate your condition. He provided his contact information for when you calmed down, but gave strict instructions that the flight should not be held. I sank back into the hard plastic chair. The cruelty of it was so precise, so calculated, that it took my breath away. Ryan hadn't just left me. He had painted a narrative that ensured no one would help me. If the airport staff thought I was a volatile, mentally unstable teenager having a tantrum, they wouldn't page me over the intercom. They wouldn't send security to find me for fear of causing a scene. They would let me go. They would respect the family's wishes. And my mother? I asked, my voice barely audible. What did she do? Miller scrolled down. The report notes that the mother, Donna Sanders, appeared distressed but confirmed the brother's statement. She boarded the aircraft without protest. She confirmed it. I closed my eyes, and suddenly, the image of my mother walking away from me, her arm linked with Ryan's, played in my mind on an agonizing loop. She hadn't looked back, not once. It wasn't just fear or passivity, it was complicity. Memories from my childhood began to surface, sharp and jagged. I remembered being 12 years old, standing in the kitchen with a shattered vase at my feet. I hadn't touched it. Ryan had knocked it over while practicing his golf swing indoors, but when my mother ran in, Ryan had pointed at me and said, Melody was throwing a fit. My mother hadn't asked me what happened. She hadn't looked for the golf club hidden behind the sofa. She had looked at me with disappointment and said, "Melody, why are you always so dramatic?" I remembered the time I was 15 and found scratches on the side of her car. Ryan had borrowed it the night before, but when my mother saw the damage, Ryan told her. Melody must have scraped it with her bike handlebars. I didn't even own a bike then, but it didn't matter. My mother sighed and said, "You need to be more careful, Melody." For years, I had thought these were isolated incidents. I thought Ryan was just a bully and my mother was just oblivious. I thought that if I was good enough, quiet enough, perfect enough, I could rewrite the story. But I was wrong. I was never the writer of my own life. Ryan was the author, and my mother was his devoted reader. He created the fiction of Melody the problem, Melody the unstable, Melody the burden, and my mother bought every copy he sold. This wasn't a sudden betrayal. This was the culmination of 18 years of conditioning. They had been practicing for this moment. Ryan had been planting the seeds of my instability for my entire life so that when the time came to cut me loose, the world would nod and say, "Yes, that makes sense." The unstable girl ran away. I looked up at Supervisor Miller. He was still waiting for me to say something, to defend myself, to act out the episode he had been warned about. "I do not have a history of instability," I said. My voice was different now. It was no longer high and panicked. It was low, flat, and cold. "I have a 4.0 grade point average. I have a scholarship to a marine biology institute. I have never been in trouble a day in my life." Miller looked skeptical. "The report says, the report is based on the word of a man who just stole my identity and left me in a foreign country." I cut him off. I stood up, smoothing the wrinkles in my cardigan. "He lied to the agent so you wouldn't look for me. He lied so he could get on that plane and leave me here until my birthday passes." Miller paused. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. He saw a girl who was terrified, yes, but he did not see a girl who was having an episode. He saw a girl who was waking up. "Why is your birthday important?" Miller asked, a frown creasing his forehead. "Because tomorrow I turn 18, I said. "And I think my brother just realized that if I am not on American soil when that happens, he wins." I didn't know exactly what he won yet. I didn't know about the trust fund or the legal clauses, but I knew, with a sudden, crystal clarity, that this was about money. It is always about money with people like Ryan. I walked over to the window of the holding room. It looked out over the tarmac, where planes were taking off and landing in a rhythmic dance of lights. Somewhere up there, in the dark sky, my family was drinking champagne. They were probably toasting to their freedom. They thought they had left a confused, crying child at the gate. They thought I would curl up and wait for them to come back, or that I would break down and prove their story right. But the girl they left at the gate was gone. She died the moment the gate agent told me they had boarded. I turned back to Miller. The tears were gone. My eyes were dry. "I am not the person he described," I said, "and I am not going to let him write the ending of this story." Miller held my gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered the tablet. "If you have no documents, I cannot release you into the terminal," he said, his tone shifting from bureaucratic to cautious. "But I can call a clear zone representative, and I can let you use the landline to call your consulate." "Thank you," I said. I sat back down, but I didn't slump. I sat with my spine straight against the hard plastic. I was alone. I was trapped. I was effectively a ghost. But I was finally seeing the world clearly. I wasn't abandoned because I was unloved. I was abandoned because I was dangerous to them. And if I was dangerous enough to leave behind, then I was dangerous enough to fight back. The door to the holding room opened again, but this time, the energy that entered was different. It wasn't the sterile indifference of Mrs. Gable or the suspicious authority of Supervisor Miller. It was a kind of brisk, grounded warmth that instantly changed the air pressure in the room. The woman who walked in was older, perhaps in her early 50s. with steel gray hair cut into a sharp bob and glasses perched on the end of her nose. She wore the standard airport uniform, a navy blazer and a silk scarf. But she wore it differently. She didn't look like a uniform. She looked like a person. Her name tag read Laura Bennett, Senior Passenger Advocate. She didn't go to the computer. She didn't look at the file Supervisor Miller had left on the desk. Instead, she walked straight over to the row of plastic chairs where I was sitting and placed a paper bag and a bottle of water on the empty seat next to me. "Turkey and Swiss on rye," she said. Her voice was husky, the kind of voice that sounded like it had been used to calm down thousands of panicked travelers over the years. "I figured you probably haven't eaten since you got off the first flight. An airport panic burns calories faster than a marathon." I looked at the bag, then up at her. For the last 2 hours, I had been treated like a piece of lost luggage or a potential security threat. This was the first time someone had treated me like a human being who might be hungry. "Thank you," I said, my voice raspy. I reached for the water first, my hands still shaking slightly as I unscrewed the cap. Laura sat down. She didn't sit behind the desk, creating a barrier between us. She sat 2 chairs away from me, close enough to speak softly but far enough away to give me space. She took off her glasses and cleaned them on the edge of her blazer. "I read Miller's report," she said, holding the glasses up to the fluorescent light to check for smudges. "It says you are a volatile teenager with a history of mental instability who voluntarily abandoned a family vacation." I stiffened, the sandwich halfway to my mouth. "It is not true," I said, the defensive reflex kicking in instantly. "I didn't—" "I know," Laura interrupted. She put her glasses back on and looked me dead in the eye. Her gaze was intense, intelligent, and completely devoid of judgment. "I have worked in this airport for 22 years. Melody, I have seen runaways. I have seen drug mules. I have seen teenagers having psychotic breaks. And I have seen kids who just wanted to make their parents angry." She gestured to my clothes, my sensible jeans, my cardigan, my lack of flashy jewelry. "You are not dressed like a runaway," she observed. "Runaways usually wear layers because they know they will be sleeping rough. You are dressed for climate control. And you are not acting like someone having an episode. You are acting like someone who is in shock." I lowered the sandwich. I felt a lump form in my throat. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was relief. "They left me," I whispered. "Let's be precise," Laura said. She leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "Did they leave you? Or did they place you here?" The question hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. "Did they place you here?" I don't understand," I stammered. "I watched the gate logs," Laura said. "Your brother didn't just board. He had a conversation with the agents. He updated your file. He made sure there was a record of your instability before the plane even pushed back. That is a lot of administrative work for a grieving brother who just lost his sister in a crowd." She waited, letting the logic sink in. She wasn't coddling me. She was respecting my intelligence enough to show me the ugly truth. "He asked for my bag," I said, the memory surfacing with painful clarity. "He offered to hold it. He made it sound like he was doing me a favor." "And you gave it to him because you trust him," Laura finished. "Or because you are used to doing what he says." "Yes." Laura nodded slowly. "And inside that bag was your identity, your citizenship, your ability to move." She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Tell me something. Melody, why today? Why this trip?" "It is my birthday present," I said. "We were going to Paris to celebrate." "A birthday?" Laura mused. "Which one?" 18, I said. "I turn 18 tomorrow." Laura went very still. The warmth in her eyes didn't vanish, but it was joined by a sharp, cold realization. She looked like a detective who had just found the missing piece of a puzzle. "Tomorrow," she repeated. "So, effectively, you are currently a minor in the eyes of many legal systems, but in 24 hours, you become a legal adult, an adult who is absent, an adult who cannot sign for herself, an adult who is, for all intents and purposes, missing. Is that bad? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It is suspicious, Laura corrected. In my experience, when families abandon a child at an airport, it is usually messy, it is loud, there is screaming, there is a scene, it is impulsive. This? She gestured around the silent room. This is clean, this is quiet, this is surgical. They cut you off right at the moment you were about to gain legal autonomy. She stood up and walked over to a small water cooler in the corner, filling a plastic cup for herself. You have rights. Melody, she said, turning back to me. Even here, even without a passport, you are a U.S. citizen in a transit zone. They cannot just hold you in this room indefinitely, and more importantly, you have the right to know the truth about how you got here. How? I asked. Ryan told them a story. They believed him. People lie, Laura said, a small, grim smile touching her lips. Witnesses get confused, but there is one thing in this airport that never lies, never blinks, and never forgets. She pointed a finger upward. I followed her gaze to a small, smoked glass dome in the ceiling corner. Cameras, I breathed. We have coverage of every square inch of this terminal, Laura said, especially the retail areas and the gate approaches. If your brother stole your documents, he did it on camera. If he orchestrated this separation, he did it on camera. And if he smiled when he walked away. Can we see it? I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Technically, security footage is restricted, Laura said. She walked back to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. Her grip was firm. But I am the senior advocate. My job is to verify the safety of vulnerable passengers. If I have reason to believe a crime was committed against a minor, which you still are, for another few hours, I can request a review. She looked deep into my eyes. But you have to be ready. Melody, sometimes, knowing the truth is harder than being lied to. Right now, you suspect he did this on purpose, but seeing it, seeing the calculation, that changes you. You can't unsee it. I thought about Ryan. I thought about the way he had toasted me at dinner, to facing the real world. I thought about my mother's silence. I want to see, I said. I need to know if I am crazy. I need to know if I am the unstable one, or if you are the target, Laura finished. Yes. Laura nodded. She pulled a radio from her belt and keyed the mic. Control, this is Bennett. I need a review of the feeds from Terminal B, Sector 4. Timestamp 1400 hours to 1445. I have a potential abandonment case that contradicts the filed report. I am bringing the passenger to the monitoring station. She released the button and looked at me. Come with me. Melody, let's go see what your family was really doing while you were looking at books. As we walked out of the holding room, I felt a shift in my own body. For the last few hours, I had been walking with my head down, trying to make myself small, trying to apologize for existing. But walking next to Laura, I straightened my spine. She was a stranger, a woman I had met 10 minutes ago, yet she was fighting for me in a way my mother never had in 18 years. Laura? I asked as we navigated the long, sterile corridor toward the security offices. Yes? Why are you helping me? Miller thinks I am a brat. Mrs. Gable thinks I am a nuisance. Why do you believe me? Laura didn't stop walking, but she glanced sideways at me. Because I have a daughter, she said simply. She is about your age, and if someone left her in a foreign country without a passport, I would burn the world down to get to her. Since your mother isn't here to do it, I guess I have to step in. It was a simple statement, but it broke something open inside me. I realized then that love wasn't about blood. It wasn't about shared DNA or family photos. It was about action. It was about showing up. Ryan and my mother had shared my blood, but they were my enemies. This woman was a stranger, but she was my ally. We are here, Laura said, stopping in front of a heavy steel door marked Security Operations, Authorized Personnel Only. She swiped her badge, and the light turned green. Ready? She asked. I took a deep breath. I wasn't ready. I was terrified. but I knew that whatever was on the other side of that door was the key to my survival. "Ready," I lied. Laura opened the door, and we stepped into the cool, dark room illuminated by the glow of 100 screens. The truth was waiting for us in high definition. The Security Operations Center was colder than the terminal, kept at a frigid temperature to protect the banks of servers humming against the back wall. The room smelled of ozone and stale coffee. A wall of monitors displayed a mosaic of the airport: ticket counters, baggage claim belts, security checkpoints, and the endless stream of passengers moving like ants through a colony. Laura spoke to the technician seated at the main console, a young man named Davis who looked bored until Laura mentioned the flight number and the time. His fingers flew across a keyboard, and the central screen flickered, replacing the grid view with a single, high-definition feed. "Timestamp 1400 hours and 12 minutes, Davis said. "Terminal B, Sector 4 Retail Corridor." I watched the screen. It was like an out-of-body experience. I saw myself, looking small and overwhelmed in my oversized cardigan, standing next to Ryan. I saw my mother a few feet away, examining a display of sunglasses. "There," Laura said, pointing a finger at the screen. "That is the handover." On the screen, the digital Melody handed the heavy leather tote bag to the digital Ryan. I watched myself say something, probably thanking him, and then turned to walk toward the bookstore. "Fast forward," Laura commanded. "Keep the focus on the male subject." Davis sped up the footage. People on the screen zipped by in a blur of motion, but Ryan remained stationary, a fixed point in the chaos. "Stop," Laura said sharply. "Play at normal speed. Zoom in on his hands." The image cropped in. The graininess increased slightly, but the picture was still damningly clear. Ryan was standing alone now. My mother had drifted further into the duty-free shop. Ryan looked around. He checked his left. He checked his right. It was not a nervous glance. It was a tactical sweep. He was ensuring he had a blind spot. Then he moved. His hand did not hesitate. He did not fumble with the zippers. He knew exactly which pocket I used for my travel documents. He unzipped the side compartment of my tote bag with a smooth, fluid motion. He reached inside and pulled out my beige travel wallet. My breath caught in my throat. I felt a physical pain in my chest, as if I had been punched. Seeing it in my mind was one thing. Seeing it in high-definition video was a violence I was not prepared for. He opened the wallet. I saw him flip it open, checking for the passport. He saw the blue book. He saw the boarding pass tucked inside. He nodded to himself, a small, barely perceptible motion of satisfaction. Then, with the speed of a magician performing a sleight of hand, he slid the wallet into the inside pocket of his own blazer. He zipped my bag back up and adjusted it on his shoulder as if nothing had happened. "He stole it," I whispered. The words tasted like ash. "He didn't hold it. He stole it." "He secured the asset," Laura said, her voice hard as flint. "He made sure you could not leave this airport, even if you wanted to. This was not an impulsive decision to abandon you because you were being difficult. This was premeditated theft." "Keep watching," Davis said. "He is moving to the gate." The camera angle switched. We were now looking at the gate area. I saw Ryan walking toward the podium. My mother met him there. She looked at him, then looked around, presumably for me. I leaned closer to the screen, desperate to see her face. I needed to see her worry. I needed to see her ask where I was. Ryan said something to her. He gestured back toward the terminal, waving a hand vaguely in the direction I had gone. He tapped his chest, right over the pocket where he had hidden my passport. My mother froze for a second. On the screen, she looked small and fragile. She looked at Ryan. Then she looked at the gate agent who was waiting to scan their passes. Ryan leaned in close to her. He said something else. I would give anything to know what those words were, but his body language was dominant, demanding. He was not asking her. He was telling her. And then, it happened. The moment that broke whatever was left of my childhood heart. My mother nodded. It was not a nod of confusion. It was not a nod of reluctance. It was a nod of agreement. She straightened her coat, turned her back on the terminal, and handed her boarding pass to the agent. She walked down the jet bridge without looking back. She knew, I said, my voice trembling. She left me. She made a choice, Laura corrected gently. But look at him. Look at your brother. My mother had disappeared down the tunnel. Ryan was the last one at the gate. He handed his pass to the agent. He spoke to her. This must have been the moment he told the lie about my instability. The agent typed something into her computer and nodded sympathetically. Ryan stepped toward the jet bridge door, but before he crossed the threshold, he stopped. He turned around. He looked directly into the security camera. Or perhaps he was just looking back at the terminal where he knew I was wandering, oblivious and trusting. And he smiled. It was not a brother's smile. It was not a sad smile. It was a cold, triumphant lifting of the corners of his mouth. It was the smile of a predator who had successfully separated the weakest member of the herd from the pack. It was a smile that said, I won. I stared at that frozen image on the screen. That face. I had shared a bathroom with that face. I had eaten breakfast across from that face for 18 years. I had defended him when he was mean, excused him when he was selfish, and loved him because I thought I had to. But the man on the screen was a stranger. He was a monster wearing my brother's skin. Pause and capture, Laura ordered. I want stills of the theft. I want stills of the conversation with the mother, and I want a high-resolution print of that look at the camera. Save it all to a secure file. Label it Incident Report 942 Alpha. Davis typed rapidly. Saving to the encrypted drive. I am also burning a copy to a physical drive for the subject. Laura turned to me. The room felt suddenly quiet, the hum of the servers sounding like a distant ocean. You are not crazy, Melody, Laura said, and you are not unstable. You are the victim of a coordinated abandonment and theft. We have the evidence. I looked away from the screen, unable to stomach the sight of that smile for 1 second longer. What do? I asked. They are gone. They have my passport. I am stuck here. First, we document everything, Laura said, her business mode kicking in. I am filing an official incident report with airport police. This is no longer a civil matter. Stealing a passport is a federal crime. Abandoning a dependent, which you technically still are, is a crime. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. But you need to think bigger than the airport. Melody, you need a lawyer, a real one, not your family lawyer, not someone your mother knows. I don't have money for a lawyer, I said. I have $20 in my pocket and a maxed-out debit card. We will figure that out, Laura said firmly. There are legal aid societies, there are advocates, but you need to understand the scale of this. People do not commit felonies on camera unless the reward outweighs the risk. Your brother is not stupid. He knew there were cameras. He just didn't think anyone would check them because he thought you would just cry and go home. He thought I would break, I said. He told them I was unstable so no one would listen to me. Exactly, Laura said. He was counting on your silence. He was counting on your fear. My mind raced back to the phone call I had overheard in the study. The pieces were slamming together with terrifying speed. The trigger date. If she is not here, the transfer. Laura, I said, my voice steady now. I think I know why. Laura looked at me. Tell me. I heard him on the phone a week ago, I said. He was talking to a lawyer, or a banker. He mentioned my 18th birthday. He said something about papers being ready the second I turn 18, and he said, I swallowed hard. He said if I am not there to contest it, the default clause kicks in. Laura's eyes widened. A trust, she said. It has to be, or an inheritance, something that vests when you become an adult. He said 24 hours is all he needed, I continued. He just needs me gone for tomorrow. If I am stuck here, in international transit, with no ID and no way to contact anyone, then you are not present to sign, Laura finished. Or you are not present to stop him from signing for you. He isn't just leaving me. I realized, the horror settling into my bones like ice. He is erasing me. He needs me to be a non-person for exactly 1 day so he can take whatever it is my father left for me. I looked back at the screen, at the frozen image of Ryan's smile. It wasn't just cruel, it was expensive. That smile was worth millions, or however much my future was worth to him. He thinks he won, I said. A cold anger began to rise in me, burning away the fear, burning away the sadness. It was a clean, sharp fuel. He thinks I am sitting in a corner crying. He doesn't know you have the tape, Laura said, and he doesn't know you have me. She handed me the flash drive that Davis had just ejected from the console. It was small, silver, and cold. Keep this, she said. This is your weapon. This proves everything. Don't lose it. Don't let anyone take it. I closed my fist around the drive. It felt heavy, heavier than it looked. It contained the death of my family and the birth of my survival. I won't, I said. Laura put a hand on my shoulder. Come on, we have police reports to file, and then we are going to find you a phone that works internationally. If your brother wants a war, we are going to give him one. I followed her out of the security room. I was still stranded. I was still broke. I was still wearing the same clothes I had left home in, but I was no longer the girl they left behind. I was a witness with evidence, and as I walked down the hallway, clutching that flash drive, I made a silent promise to the smiling man on the screen. You wanted me out of the way, Ryan, but you just put me exactly where I needed to be to see who you really are. The adrenaline that had surged through me while watching the security footage began to curdle into a cold, hard determination. I was no longer just a stranded teenager. I was a crime scene, and my brother had left fingerprints everywhere. Laura led me to a small, glass-walled office adjacent to the security center. She handed me a landline phone and a list of numbers for the U.S. consulate. I will get the consulate on the line to start the emergency passport protocol, Laura said, sitting at the desk and pulling a laptop toward her. But while we wait for the bureaucracy to grind its gears, we need to understand the timeline. You said your brother mentioned a trigger date on the phone. Yes, I said, pacing the small room. He said he needed 24 hours. He said if I wasn't there to contest it, the default clause kicks in. Okay. Laura opened a browser window. Do you have access to any family accounts? Shared emails? Cloud storage? If he booked the tickets, the paper trail has to exist somewhere. I stopped pacing. We have a family data plan, I said, and a shared cloud account for photos and documents. My mom insists on it so she can track my location and see my messages. She never thought I would use it to track them. I sat down at the laptop. My fingers flew across the keys. I knew the password. It was my mother's birthday. It always had been. They were so arrogant, so sure of my subservience, that they hadn't even bothered to change the login credentials before executing their coup. The cloud drive opened. I ignored the folders of family photos, images of a happiness that I now knew was entirely fabricated, and went straight to the synced contacts and recent emails. My heart hammered against my ribs as I saw the synchronization timestamp. Ryan's phone had backed up to the cloud just before he boarded the plane. Look at this, I said, pointing to the screen. Laura leaned in. What am I looking at? Ryan's recent calls, I said. He made 3 calls while we were in the terminal. One to Mom, one to me, which he faked, because he had my phone, and one to a number listed as Vanguard Legal. Is that your family lawyer? Laura asked. No, I shook my head. Our family lawyer is Mr. Henderson. He is 70 years old and handles estate planning. Vanguard Legal sounds aggressive. I opened a new tab and searched for the firm. The website was sleek, black and gray, advertising services for high net worth asset recovery and contentious probate litigation. Contentious probate, Laura read aloud. That means fighting over a will or a trust. I went back to the cloud account. I clicked on the email icon. Ryan hadn't synced his sent folder, but he had synced his trash. He must have deleted the incriminating emails right before the flight, thinking that deleting them from his phone was enough. He forgot that the cloud never sleeps. There was an email sent yesterday. The subject line was simply, "Itinerary confirmed. contingency active. I clicked it. The recipient wasn't Mom. It was an email address at Vanguard Legal. The body of the email was short. Subject is traveling. Separation will occur at the transit hub as discussed. Documentation of behavioral instability will be filed with airline staff upon departure. Ensure the incapacity filing is ready for the judge by 9 in the morning on the 14th. I felt the blood drain from my face. Incapacity filing, I whispered. Laura's face was grim. They are not just claiming you are missing. Melody, they are building a case that you are mentally unfit. That is why he told the gate agent I was having an episode. I realized the horror of it settling in like a heavy stone. He wasn't just making an excuse for why I wasn't on the plane. He was creating an official record, a third-party witness. If you are declared mentally incapacitated or unstable on your 18th birthday, Laura said slowly, connecting the legal dots, you cannot legally take control of any assets. A guardian would be appointed. Ryan, I said, or Mom. Suddenly, a memory flashed in my mind. It was vague, from years ago, shortly before my father died. We were sitting on the porch. He looked sick, tired, but his eyes were intense. He had grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. I tied it up tight. Mel, he had said, I know they overlook you, but I didn't. When you are of age, you will have the leverage. Just don't let them sign for you. Never let them sign for you. I hadn't understood it then. I thought he was talking about college tuition. But now, staring at the words incapacity filing, I understood. My father, I said, my voice shaking. He left me something big, and Ryan can't touch it unless I'm out of the way. But why abandon you? Laura asked. Why not just coerce you into signing? Because of the clause, I said, my mind racing. Ryan said on the phone, if she is not here to contest it, my father must have put in a stipulation that I have to be physically present to accept the inheritance. Or maybe... I clicked on another deleted email. This one was an attachment, a PDF of a flight confirmation. It wasn't for a return trip to the U.S. It was a one-way ticket for Melody Sanders from the transit hub to a third country, a place with lax visa laws and limited diplomatic reach. The date was for tomorrow night. They weren't going to leave me here forever, I said, realizing the full depth of the depravity. They were going to leave me here just long enough to miss the deadline. Then, Ryan probably arranged for me to be found and shipped off somewhere else so I couldn't come back and fight the court order. They wanted you to look like a runaway, Laura said, her voice filled with disgust. A runaway teen who cracked under pressure, abandoned her family, and disappeared. That narrative fits perfectly with a claim of mental instability. It gives them total control over your estate. They didn't just steal my passport, I said, tears stinging my eyes. They stole my voice. They stole my sanity. They planned to gaslight a judge into thinking I was crazy so they could rob me. Laura stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the planes taxiing on the runway. It is a brilliant plan, she admitted. Evil, but brilliant. It relies on the assumption that no one will listen to a hysterical 18-year-old girl without ID. It relies on the assumption that you will panic and act exactly how they predicted. She turned back to me. But they made one mistake. What? I asked. They assumed you were the weak one, Laura said. They assumed you were the backup plan who would just fold. They didn't know you would find me, and they didn't know you would crack their password. I looked at the laptop screen, at the evidence of their betrayal. The sadness I had felt earlier was gone. The shock was gone. In their place was a clarity I had never possessed before. I looked at the email to the law firm again. Ensure the incapacity filing is ready. They are going to court tomorrow morning, I said. In the U.S., that is, 6 hours from now, given the time difference. We have to stop them, Laura said. We need to get this evidence to someone who can freeze that hearing. I can't call them, I said. They won't answer. And even if they did, they would just laugh. Ryan thinks he has won. We don't call them, Laura said, reaching for the phone. We call the one person Ryan fears more than you. Who? The authorities, Laura said. But not just the police. We need to find the executor of your father's will. If Ryan is using a shady firm like Vanguard, it means the original executor is probably someone honest who Ryan is trying to bypass. Mr. Henderson, I said. The old family lawyer. Ryan hates him. He calls him a dinosaur. Then Mr. Henderson is our best friend, Laura said. Do you have his number? I nodded. It is in the contacts. Laura handed me the receiver. The dial tone hummed in my ear, a sound of possibility. This is it, Melody, Laura said softly. You are not the victim anymore. You are the plaintiff. Make the call. I dialed the number. My hand was steady. I was 18 years old. I was abandoned in a foreign airport. I had no money and no passport. But as I listened to the ring on the other end of the line, I knew one thing for certain. I was about to ruin Ryan's day. The call to Mr. Henderson was brief, urgent, and devastatingly effective. When I told the old lawyer that I was stranded in an international transit zone and that Ryan had mentioned an incapacity filing, the grandfatherly warmth in his voice vanished, replaced by the sharp, steel-trap tone of a litigator who had been practicing for 50 years. He didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't ask if I was exaggerating. He simply asked for the flight number and the time of arrival. Sit tight, Melody, he had said, his voice crackling over the landline. Do not move. I am contacting the French authorities and the airline's legal department. Ryan thinks he is landing in Paris for a vacation. He is about to land in a jurisdiction that takes passport theft very seriously. Now we waited. The next 3 hours were a blur of nervous energy. Laura brought me coffee. We sat in the glass office, watching the flight tracker on her laptop screen. The little airplane icon inched across the digital map, crossing the ocean, descending over Europe. It was a digital representation of my fate. When the icon finally touched down, my heart jumped into my throat. They are on the ground, Laura said, checking her watch. Local time in Paris is 8 in the morning. They will be taxiing to the gate. And then what? I asked, my hands gripping the edge of the desk. Then, Laura said grimly, Ryan turns on his phone. We had kept the cloud account open on the laptop. For hours. It had been dormant. But the moment the plane connected to the airport's cellular network, the synchronization began. It was ghostly watching the screen populate with data in real time. Ping, a location update. Charles de Gaulle Airport. Terminal 2. Ping, a calendar reminder. Meeting with Vanguard Legal. Remote, 9:00 a.m. Stad. And then, the messages. Ryan must have drafted them while in the air, waiting for a signal to send them. They flooded onto the screen in a torrent of arrogance. The first was to the Vanguard lawyer. Package delivered. The girl is stranded. No ID, no money. She will be a non-factor for the hearing. The second was to a contact I didn't recognize, labeled simply as Trustee B. Proceed with the beneficiary modification immediately upon the judge's signature. Remove Melody Sanders. Insert Ryan Sanders as primary controller. Reroute the quarterly distributions to the Cayman account we discussed. I stared at the screen, the words blurring before my eyes. Beneficiary modification. There it is, Laura said, pointing at the screen with a trembling finger. He isn't just taking over guardianship, he is changing the structure of the trust. What trust? I asked. I never knew we had a trust. Your father knew, Laura said. Look at the subject line of that last email. I looked. It read, the Sanders Sovereign Trust, Activation Protocols. The name triggered a memory so sharp it made me gasp. I was 10 years old. My father was in his study, signing a stack of thick documents. He had let me sit on his lap. I remembered asking him what he was doing. He had tapped the leather binder and said, This is your shield. Melody, this is the sovereign. It means no one rules you but you. The sovereign trust, I whispered. He built it for me. And Ryan is trying to break into it, Laura said. He needs you declared incapacitated because that is the only way to bypass the age restriction. If you are competent and 18, the money is yours. If you are crazy and 18, the money goes to your guardian. The phone on the desk rang, making us both jump. It was Henderson. Put him on speaker, I said. Laura hit the button. Mr. Henderson, what is happening? It is done, Henderson's voice came through, sounding breathless, but triumphant. The French border police intercepted them at the jet bridge. They were detained for possession of stolen property, your passport. Did they find it? I asked. Ryan tried to deny it, Henderson said, a dark chuckle in his voice. He tried to claim he was holding it for safekeeping, but when they searched him, they found it in his inside jacket pocket, along with your return ticket. But that is not the headline. Melody. What is? The police confiscated his phone as part of the investigation into the identity theft, Henderson continued. Since I was on the line as your legal representative, and since we have a mutual legal assistance treaty, they allowed me to hear the preliminary questioning, and more importantly, they allowed your mother to see the messages that were popping up on his screen. I held my breath. Mom saw them? She saw everything, Henderson said. She saw the message about the incapacity filing. She saw the text about the Cayman account, but the one that broke her was a text Ryan received from his lawyer just as they were landing. What did it say? I asked. It said, once the mother signs the support affidavit declaring the girl unstable, we can initiate the secondary phase, declaring the mother senile within 6 months. That secures total control for you. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed, but the world felt like it had stopped. He was going to do it to her, too, I said, the realization washing over me like ice water. He wasn't just using her to get to me, he was going to use her, and then he was going to discard her. She collapsed, Melody, Henderson said softly. Physically collapsed. The medics had to be called. She is sitting in a holding room in Paris right now, sobbing. She kept saying, "He is the good one. He is the good one." She couldn't process it. She thought she was protecting the family legacy. She didn't realize she was signing her own warrant. I felt a strange, hollow sensation in my chest. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt happy that she was finally seeing the truth. But mostly, I just felt a profound, aching pity. She had spent her whole life worshiping a son who looked at her and saw nothing but an obstacle to be removed. Where is Ryan? I asked. He is currently being processed, Henderson said. He is shouting about his rights, demanding to call the embassy, threatening to sue everyone from the airline to the French government. He doesn't realize yet that the game is over. He doesn't know you have access to his cloud. He thinks this is just a misunderstanding about a passport. He doesn't know about the sovereign trust? I asked. He knows about the trust, Henderson corrected. What he doesn't know is that I am the primary executor. Your father didn't trust your mother with it, and he certainly didn't trust Ryan. He appointed me to watch over it until you turned 18. Ryan thought he could bypass me by going to a different judge with a claim of incapacity. He thought if he presented a court order saying you were crazy, I would be forced to hand over the keys. But I am not crazy, I said, my voice firm. And I am not missing. No, you are not, Henderson said. And because of the time difference, it is currently 3 in the morning in New York. The court's open in 6 hours. Ryan's lawyer is going to walk into that courtroom expecting to file an unopposed motion for guardianship. And we are going to stop him, Laura said, leaning toward the phone. Better, Henderson said. We are going to let him walk in. We are going to let him stand before the judge. And then, Melody is going to make an appearance. But I am here, I said. I can't get back in 6 hours. You don't need to be in the room, Henderson said. The courts allow emergency video testimony for jurisdictional disputes. Laura, do you have a secure video link in that office? We do, Laura confirmed. Good, Henderson said. Get some rest. Melody, you have a court date in the morning, and you are going to want to look sharp. You are not just fighting for your money anymore. You are fighting to prove you exist. I hung up the phone. The silence returned. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was charged with potential. I looked at the laptop screen one last time. I saw the stream of messages, the cold calculations, the betrayal mapped out in ones and zeros. I thought of my mother, broken in a Paris airport. I thought of Ryan, raging in a cell. And then I thought of my father. I thought of the sovereign trust. He had known, all those years ago. He had looked at his family and seen the rot at the core. He hadn't been able to fix it, but he had given me a weapon. He had buried it deep, waiting for the day I would be strong enough to wield it. "Laura?" I said. "Yeah, kid?" "I'm starving," I said, "and I need to wash my face. If I'm going to destroy my brother in court, I don't want to look like a victim." Laura smiled, a genuine wide grin that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "I think I can find you a toothbrush and a bagel. Let's get you ready for war." Mr. Henderson stayed on the line, his voice acting as a lifeline across the ocean. While Laura went to fetch coffee and a charger, the old lawyer began to dismantle the mystery of my father's legacy, piece by piece. For years, I had assumed my father was simply a businessman who had lost his fortune before he died. We lived well, but my mother always preached scarcity. I now realized that the scarcity was a fabrication, a curtain pulled tight to hide the stage where the real play was happening. "You need to understand the architecture of what your father built." "Melody," Henderson said, his tone shifting from urgent to professorial. "He came to me 5 years before he passed. He did not want a standard will. He did not want a family trust where the surviving spouse controls the assets until the children come of age. He was very specific. He used the word silo." "A silo?" I asked, leaning closer to the speakerphone. "He wanted you siloed," Henderson explained. "He told me, Ryan has the hunger, and Donna has the blindness. If I leave the money in a pot, Ryan will eat it, and Donna will let him. So, he created the Sanders Sovereign Trust. It is an irrevocably distinct entity. It does not commingle with the family estate. It does not answer to your mother's oversight." I felt a lump form in my throat. My father had seen it. He had seen the dynamic that I was only just beginning to understand. The way Ryan consumed everything in his path and the way my mother served it to him on a silver platter. "Here is the mechanism that saved you," Henderson continued. "The trust has a constructive presence clause. It was designed to vest fully and automatically at the exact minute you turn 18. But there was a catch. Your father knew that coercion was a risk. He feared they might bully you into signing it over the moment you became an adult. So, he added a failsafe." "What failsafe?" I asked. "You cannot transfer the principal," Henderson said. "You cannot sign it away. You cannot gift it. You can only access the income for your own maintenance. The capital is locked down until you are 30. Unless, and this is the part Ryan was trying to exploit, unless the beneficiary is declared mentally incompetent." The brilliance of it washed over me. My father had locked the vault so tight that even I couldn't give the money to Ryan if I wanted to. Ryan must have been furious when he read the fine print. He must have realized that bullying me wouldn't work, that guilt-tripping me wouldn't work. The only key that would open the door to the capital was a court order declaring me unfit to manage my own life. "If I am incompetent," I said, following the logic, "then my guardian takes control of the decisions." "Precisely," Henderson said. "The guardian steps into your shoes. If Ryan could get a judge to agree that you were unstable, a danger to yourself, or missing under suspicious psychological circumstances, the sovereign protections would dissolve. He would be granted conservatorship. He would have the legal power to liquidate the assets, supposedly for your care, but in reality, he would drain it dry within a year." I looked at my reflection in the darkened glass of the office window. I saw the girl who had spent her life trying to be invisible, trying to be the good daughter. I realized now that my silence hadn't just been a coping mechanism, it had been a vulnerability. Ryan had banked on my silence. He had bet everything on the fact that I would be too scared to speak, too confused to fight. "He almost pulled it off," I whispered. "He came very close," Henderson agreed. "The timing was the weapon. By dumping you in a foreign transit zone 24 hours before the vesting period, He created the perfect storm. You would be absent. You would be undocumented. The airline logs would show instability. He would walk into court tomorrow morning with a stack of affidavits and no defendant to contradict him. He would have told the judge that he was doing this out of love, to protect his troubled little sister. But he forgot about you, I said. He didn't forget, Henderson chuckled darkly. He just thought I was old and toothless, and he underestimated you. He thought you were just a pawn. He never imagined you would become the queen. I closed my eyes and let the feeling of my father's protection surround me. It wasn't a warm hug. It was a cold, steel wall. He hadn't left me a letter full of sentimental advice. He hadn't left me a locket. He had left me a fortress of contract law. He had known, even when I was a little girl, that I would need armor. He knew that the people who should have loved me were the ones I needed protection from. What do I need to do? I asked. The fear that had been gripping my chest since the gate closed was gone. In its place was a sharp, crystalline focus. You need to activate the sovereign protocol, Henderson said. When the court opens in New York, we will patch you in via video link. I have already filed an emergency motion to intervene. The judge is going to see Ryan's lawyer expecting a rubber stamp. Instead, he is going to see you. And what do I say? You tell the truth, Henderson said. But you do not tell it like a victim. You confirm your identity. You confirm your location. You state clearly that you are of sound mind and that you are currently being detained due to the criminal actions of the petitioner, Ryan Sanders. You ask the court to affirm your status as the sole beneficiary of the sovereign trust. And then, Henderson's voice dropped, becoming solemn. You accept your inheritance. Once you verbally accept it on the record, the trust locks. It becomes yours. Ryan is permanently shut out. The money, the properties, the portfolio, it all transfers to your name. You become the head of the Sanders estate. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was counting down. In a few hours, the sun would rise in New York. In a few hours, I would stop being the little sister. I am ready, I said. Good, Henderson said. One last thing. Melody, your father left a personal note attached to the final executed copy of the trust. It was sealed until the activation event. Since we are accelerating the process, I can read it to you now. My breath hitched. Please. I heard the rustle of paper over the line. Then, Henderson read, his voice wavering slightly. Melody, if you are reading this, it means the wolves are at the door. I am sorry I could not be there to chase them away, but I taught you to be quiet so you could listen. I taught you to be observant so you could see the traps. You are not the backup plan. You are the one who survives. Trust your gut, trust the law, and never let them make you feel small. You are a Sanders, but you are the better version of us. Take it all, sweetheart. It belongs to you. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and fast, but I didn't let them fall. I wiped them away with the back of my hand. He knew, I said softly. He knew everything. He loved you, Henderson said, and he put the gun in your hand. Now, you have to pull the trigger. I stood up. I walked over to the window and looked out at the tarmac, where the lights of the runway stretched out into the darkness like a path. I wasn't scared of the court hearing. I wasn't scared of Ryan. I wasn't even scared of being alone anymore. My father hadn't just left me money. He had left me a choice. I could be the victim of a tragedy, or I could be the architect of my own justice. Laura walked back into the room, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. She looked at me, assessing my posture, my dry eyes, the set of my jaw. She smiled. You look different, she noted. I feel different, I said. I took the coffee. Mr. Henderson just explained the rules of the game. And? Laura asked. And I realized I have been holding the winning hand the entire time, I said. Ryan thought he abandoned me, but he actually just set me free. I took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter and hot, and it woke up every nerve in my body. Let's get the video link set up, I told Laura. I don't want to be late for my own coronation. The video feed flickered to life, and suddenly, The sterile gray wall of the airport security office was replaced by the rich mahogany and leather of a New York courtroom. It was 9 a.m. on the East Coast. The light in the courtroom was sharp and yellow, a stark contrast to the artificial fluorescent buzz surrounding me. I sat straight in the chair Laura had positioned for me. I had washed my face, combed my hair with my fingers, and buttoned my cardigan all the way to the top. I did not look like a fashion model, but I did not look like a hysterical runaway either. I looked like exactly what I was, a young woman waiting for a business meeting. On the screen, I saw them. Ryan was sitting at the plaintiff's table. He was wearing a fresh suit. He must have packed one in his carry-on, but his posture was tense. Beside him sat a man I didn't recognize, presumably the shark from Vanguard Legal. They were whispering, confident, heads bent together over a stack of documents that were designed to erase my existence. Docket number 472, the bailiff announced. In the matter of the Sanders Sovereign Trust, petition for emergency guardianship. The judge, a woman with formidable glasses and an expression that suggested she had no patience for nonsense, looked down at the paperwork. Counsel, you are claiming that the beneficiary, Melody Sanders, is unavailable and mentally incapacitated due to a psychotic break during transit? Yes, Your Honor. Ryan's lawyer stood up, smoothing his tie. It is a tragic situation. Miss Sanders abandoned her family at the international hub yesterday. She is currently missing, without identification or funds. Her brother, my client, is merely seeking temporary control to ensure the assets are not frozen while we coordinate search and rescue efforts. Ryan nodded solemnly, playing the role of the devastated brother to perfection. I see, the judge said. And you have an affidavit from the mother? We do, Your Honor, the lawyer said. Donna Sanders confirms the girl's history of instability. Actually, Your Honor. Mr. Henderson's voice cut through the air. He wasn't on screen, but he was physically present in the courtroom, standing at the defense table. That affidavit is currently being contested as it was signed under duress and manipulation. And as for the beneficiary being missing, I believe she would like to speak for herself. Mr. Henderson gestured to the large monitor mounted on the courtroom wall. Laura, standing off camera next to me, typed a command. My feed went live in the courtroom. I saw Ryan's head snap up. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost violent. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening slightly, then closing. The confident smirk from the security footage was gone, replaced by the sheer, unadulterated terror of a man watching a ghost walk through the wall. Miss Sanders? The judge asked, looking at the screen. Can you hear me? I can. Your Honor, I said. My voice was calm, steady, and amplified through the courtroom speakers. It sounded deeper than I remembered. I am Melody Sanders. I am currently in the Security Operations Center at the Transit Hub, under the protection of the Senior Passenger Advocate. Your Honor, Ryan's lawyer jumped up. This is highly irregular. We cannot verify the state of mind of the... Sit down, counsel, the judge snapped. She turned back to the screen. Miss Sanders, are you being held against your will? No, Your Honor, I said. I was detained because my passport was stolen. However, the French border police have recovered the stolen item from the person who took it, my brother, Ryan Sanders. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Ryan looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. He leaned over to his lawyer, whispering frantically. That is a lie, Ryan hissed, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. She gave it to me. She is confused. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get angry. I just looked directly into the camera lens, knowing that on the other end, I was looking directly into his eyes. I am not confused, Ryan, I said, and I am not unstable. I have seen the emails you sent to Vanguard Legal. I have seen the text messages about the Cayman account, and I have read the draft regarding the plan to declare our mother senile in 6 months. Ryan froze. The lawyer next to him stiffened, slowly pulling his papers away from Ryan, creating a physical distance between them. Even a shark knows when there is blood in the water. Your Honor, I continued, turning my attention to the judge, I am 18 years old as of today. I am of sound mind, and I am formally requesting to activate the vesting protocols of the Sanders Sovereign Trust. Objection! Ryan shouted, standing up. She doesn't know what she's doing. She is a child. She has no legal representation. Actually, I said, cutting him off with surgical precision, I have retained Mr. Henderson as my independent counsel, effective immediately. He is no longer just the executor. He is my attorney. I looked at Mr. Henderson on the screen. He gave me a small, proud nod. Mr. Henderson, I said, please execute the lockout. With pleasure, Henderson said. He opened a folder on his desk. Your Honor, per the instructions of the sole beneficiary, I am formally locking the trust. All secondary access keys held by Ryan Sanders or Donna Sanders are hereby revoked. The guardian clause is null and void due to the presence and competence of the heir. So ordered, the judge said, banging her gavel. It was a dull thud, but it sounded like a cannon shot. Wait, Ryan yelled. He was losing control now. The mask was slipping completely. You can't do this. Mom signed the papers. I am the head of this family. That money needs to be managed by someone who knows finance, not a little girl who hides in her room. The money, I said, my voice cutting through his shouting, is not going to be managed by you, Ryan. It never was. And since you mentioned Mom, I took a breath. This was the hardest part, but also the most necessary. I am submitting the police report from the airport as evidence of conspiracy to defraud, I said. I am removing Donna Sanders from any trustee position she holds. She is not to have access to the accounts. She is not to have decision-making power. If she needs financial support, she can apply to me directly. Ryan stared at the screen. He looked small. For the first time in my life, I realized he wasn't a giant. He was just a greedy boy in a suit that cost more than he was worth. You are ruining us, he spat. You are selfish. I am protecting what is mine, I said. You tried to erase me, Ryan. You tried to make me a ghost, but you forgot that ghosts haunt people. The judge looked at Ryan. Mr. Sanders, given the allegations of passport theft and the evidence presented regarding the intent to defraud this court, I am ordering a recess. I am also forwarding the transcript of this hearing to the district attorney's office. I suggest you do not leave the state or the country. Oh, wait, you are already in custody in France, aren't you? Ryan didn't answer. He slumped into his chair. Mr. Henderson, the judge said, the trust is vested. The assets are transferred. The petitioner's motion is denied with prejudice. Thank you, Your Honor, Henderson said. The screen went black. The feed cut. I sat there in the silence of the security office. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel a rush of adrenaline, but instead, I just felt a profound, quiet calm. It was the feeling of a storm finally breaking. Laura looked at me. You did it, she said softly. You stopped him. I didn't just stop him, I said, standing up and smoothing my cardigan again. I fired him. I picked up the flash drive, the evidence of his crime, and put it in my pocket. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to cry. The facts had done the work for me. Ryan was facing criminal charges in 2 countries. My mother was facing the reality that her golden son was a fraud, and I was standing on my own 2 feet, holding the keys to my own kingdom. What now? Laura asked. Now, I said, looking at the door, I need to book a flight. I have a house to clean out, and I think I'm going to fly first class. I returned to the house 3 days later. I did not come back to sleep in my old bed or to eat at the table where I had been starving for affection for 18 years. I came back to pack. The house was quiet when I unlocked the front door. The silence was different now. It was no longer the heavy, oppressive silence of secrets being kept. It was the hollow silence of a kingdom that had fallen. My mother was sitting in the living room. She looked 10 years older than she had when we boarded the plane. Her skin was gray, and her eyes were red-rimmed. When she saw me, she flinched. It was a small, involuntary movement, like a child expecting a blow. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. She was afraid of me. The daughter she had ignored was gone, replaced by the woman who held the purse strings. "Melody," she breathed, standing up shakily. She took a step toward me, her hands reaching out. "Oh, thank God. You are safe. I was so worried. Ryan told me. He said it was all a misunderstanding." I stepped back. I did not shout. I did not cry. I simply drew a line in the air between us that she would never cross again. "Stop," I said. My voice was calm, echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. "Do not touch me, and do not lie to me." "It was a mistake," she pleaded, tears spilling over. "We were confused. Ryan said you ran away. I didn't know about the trust. I didn't know he took your passport until the police found it." "You knew," I said. "You saw the messages on the plane. You saw the plan to have me declared incapacitated, and you saw the plan to have yourself declared senile." She went pale. She slumped back onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. "I just wanted to keep the family together. Ryan said we were going to lose everything if the money went to you. He said you were too young. He said he would take care of us. He was going to put you in a home, Mom," I said brutally. "He was going to lock you away just like he tried to lock me away. You chose him. You chose the wolf because he told you he was a shepherd." Just then, the front door slammed open. Ryan stormed in. He was out on bail, pending the international hearing, but he looked like a wrecked man. His suit was rumpled, his tie was missing, and the arrogance that had defined his entire existence was replaced by a frantic, feral desperation. He stopped when he saw me. His eyes narrowed into slits. "You," he spat, "you think you are so smart, don't you? You think because you cried to a judge you are in charge?" "I am in charge," I said, looking him up and down. "Mr. Henderson confirmed the transfer this morning. The house, the investments, the accounts, they are all in my name now. You are trespassing." "It is my money," Ryan screamed, his face turning a blotchy red. "I am the firstborn. I am the one who sat in those meetings with Dad. I am the one who learned the business. You were just the spare. You were just the girl he felt sorry for." "Is that what you think?" I asked. "You think he gave it to me out of pity?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the original copy of the letter Mr. Henderson had read to me. It was heavy parchment, covered in my father's distinct, jagged handwriting. "Read it," I said, tossing it onto the coffee table in front of them. Ryan stared at it. He didn't move. My mother reached out with trembling fingers and picked it up. She read it silently, her lips moving, tears dripping onto the paper. "He knew," she whispered, her voice breaking. He says he knew Ryan had the hunger. He says he knew I had the blindness. He saw you." I told them. "He saw exactly who you were. He didn't leave me the money because I was the favorite. He left me the money because he knew that the second he was gone, you two would try to eat me alive. The trust wasn't a gift. Ryan, it was a shield." Ryan snatched the letter from our mother's hands. He read it, his eyes scanning the lines frantically. He crushed the paper in his fist. "He hated me," Ryan hissed. "He always hated me because I was stronger than him." "No," I said. "He didn't hate you. He just didn't trust you. And you just proved him right. You committed a felony on camera to steal from your own sister. That is not strength. That is weakness." I looked around the room. I looked at the vase Ryan had broken years ago. I looked at the dining table where I had been made to feel small. I felt absolutely nothing. The nostalgia was dead. The pain was dead. "I am selling the house," I announced. My mother looked up, horrified. "What? But where will we go?" "I don't know," I said. "And for the first time in my life, it is not my job to care. You have 6 months to vacate. I am being generous. Mr. Henderson wanted to evict you today." "Melody, please," my mother begged. "We are family." "I have a family," I said, thinking of Laura, who was waiting in the car outside, and Mr. Henderson, who was fighting like a lion for me in court. "You two are just people I used to know." I picked up the small box of books and personal items I had packed. I didn't need anything else. I didn't want their clothes or their jewelry or their memories. I am going to California, I said. I am going to take that internship. I am going to study the ocean. And I am going to live a life where no one tells me I am unstable just because I have a voice. I walked toward the door. Ryan made a move to step in my way. His fists clenched. But he stopped when he saw the look in my eyes. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the cold, hard assurance of someone who held all the cards. "Get out of my way," I said softly. He moved. I walked out of the house and down the driveway. The sun was shining, bright and hot on the pavement. I tossed my box into the back of the waiting car and climbed into the passenger seat. Laura looked over at me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, watching the house disappear in the rearview mirror. "I am." I realized then that the moment at the airport, when the gate closed and I was left alone in the terminal, hadn't been a tragedy. It had been an exorcism. They had tried to throw me away, but they had only succeeded in throwing away the only person who would have ever truly loved them. I was 18, I was wealthy, I was smart, and most importantly, I was free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Melody's decision. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help us share more stories like this with the world.